The space station always carried a strange kind of silence. Even though hundreds of people lived and worked inside it, the long corridors echoed with the sound of machines more than the voices of people. For Kyle, an ordinary human engineer, it was simply his life. He spent most of his days fixing broken panels, sealing air ducts, or repairing the humming generators that kept the lights on. It was not a grand life, but it was steady. He liked steady. But that day, steady changed. He first noticed her in the crowded mess hall where tired workers and hungry traders gathered to eat. She sat alone at a corner table, a tray untouched before her. Her skin glimmered faint blue under the harsh station lights, as though it carried a glow of its own. Her long, dark hair framed a face that looked both strong and fragile at the same time. Most of the humans avoided her. They glanced, they whispered, they pointed, but nobody went close. She was different. She was not human. Her name, as Kale later learned, was Leora. Kale stood there for a moment, holding his own tray of food, watching, the way she sat with her shoulders slightly hunched as if trying to make herself smaller. Her eyes were downcast, but he caught the sadness in them. It was the kind of sadness that was heavy, the kind that stayed even when no one else could see it. Something in that look struck him deeply. He knew what loneliness felt like, though maybe not in the way she carried it. His friend sat at another table and waved him over. He almost went. It would have been easier, safer, but his feet didn't move toward them. Instead, they carried him toward her. "Mind if I sit?" Kyle asked softly, setting his tray down. Leora's head lifted slowly as if she was surprised someone had spoken to her. For a second she hesitated, her eyes narrowing in suspicion. Aliens on human stations rarely trusted easily. They had good reason not to. But there was something gentle in Kale's voice, something without mockery or cruelty. So she nodded. Just once. Kyle sat. The silence stretched between them. Other voices from the hall rose and fell. Plates clattered. Laughter echoed from another table. But here, at this corner, it felt quiet. "You don't like the food?" Kyle asked after a while, nodding at her untouched tray. She looked at it, then at him. "It tastes too different," she admitted. Her voice was soft, but it carried a musical tone, almost like a whisper of wind. "Not like home?" Kyle smiled faintly. "I get that. I still miss bread from Earth. What's food like on your world?" Her eyes flickered. For a moment he thought she wouldn't answer. Then she spoke, slowly. "Our oceans glowed at night. We had fruit that grew along the shore, sweet and warm when you bit into them. Food wasn't only about hunger, it was memory, family, belonging." Her voice trembled near the end, and Kale realized that speaking of her world hurt her. He didn't push. He didn't say, "I'm sorry," like most people would. Instead, he just nodded, letting her know he was listening. That was enough. For the first time in months, Leora felt her chest loosen. People usually wanted details or pity or silence, but this human gave her something different: patience. Kale ate quietly, giving her space, and then, when she finally took a small bite from her tray, his heart warmed. It was a tiny thing, but he felt like he had done something right. He asked about her name, and she asked about his. He told her about Earth skies, blue and endless. She told him about mountains that sang when the wind passed through them. Neither of them said much, yet every word mattered. As the hall emptied, Kale stood. "Thanks for letting me sit," he said. And for a brief moment, Leora smiled. It was a small smile. Fragile. But to Kale, it was brighter than any star outside the station windows. That night, when he lay in his small bunk, Kale thought about her. He didn't know why he had walked over. He didn't know what this would lead to. But deep in his chest, he felt a quiet certainty. That single choice, to sit beside her when no one else dared, was the start of something that would change both of their lives forever. The next day, Kale found himself looking for her without even meaning to. He walked through the long metal halls, tools hanging from his belt, eyes drifting to the places where people usually gathered. Part of him told himself it was silly, He barely knew her. But another part of him couldn't forget the way her smile had looked, small but real, after so much silence. He saw her again in the observation deck, sitting by the wide glass window that showed endless stars. She looked smaller against that view, like a single fragile note in a song too big to hear. "You like the view?" Cale asked gently, stepping closer. She turned, her blue-tinted eyes reflecting the lights of distant suns. "It reminds me of home," she said quietly. The night skies were never empty, always filled with lights. Cale sat beside her, not too close, just enough to show he was there. "I grew up staring at Earth's sky," he told her. "Stars looked tiny from the ground. I used to wonder if someone else out there was looking back." Leora studied him for a moment. "And now you know the answer." He smiled. "Yeah, now I know." For a while they just sat in silence, staring at the stars. It was the kind of silence that felt gentle, not heavy. Leora's chest rose and fell slowly, and Cale noticed how tired she looked, as if she had been carrying the weight of an entire world on her shoulders. Finally, she spoke again. "My people, we were not warriors. We built. We sang. We studied. When the war came, we had nothing to fight back with." Her voice cracked at the edge. "I lost my parents, my brother, my friends. Everyone I loved was scattered or destroyed." Her hands trembled slightly in her lap. Kyle's first instinct was to say something comforting, but he stopped himself. Words could not bring her family back. So instead, he leaned forward a little and said softly, "I can't imagine that pain. But I'm here now. If you want someone to listen, I'll listen." Leora blinked at him, surprised. Most people turned away when she spoke about her world. They changed the subject or gave her pity she did not want. But Cale didn't. He just sat with her, steady as the stars outside the window, and slowly her heart began to ease. In the days that followed, they met often, sometimes in the mess hall, sometimes by the observation deck, sometimes near the humming engines where Kyle worked. He showed her how the machines kept the station alive, and she told him about the oceans of her world that glowed in the dark like rivers of stars. They shared meals together. At first, she only ate small bites, forcing herself through food that tasted strange. But Cale would joke lightly, saying, "Don't worry, station stew tastes just as bad for humans." That made her laugh once, a real laugh, soft and almost shy. He felt proud of it, as if he had uncovered a rare jewel. Bit by bit, trust grew between them. Cale never treated her like a burden. He never asked her for anything in return. He simply gave his time, his ear, and his quiet loyalty. And in return, Leora found herself opening up in ways she had not since her planet fell. She told him about her people's songs, about the way the mountains would sing with the wind, and about the children who used to dance in glowing fields. Kyle listened like every word was a treasure. One evening, as the artificial lights dimmed, to mimic night, she looked at him and said softly, "You are not like the others." He tilted his head. "What do you mean?" "Most humans avoid me. They look at me like I am a reminder of something broken. But you sit beside me without fear." "Why?" Kyle thought about it for a long moment. Then he answered simply, "Because no one should have to sit alone." Those words stayed with her. They dug deep into her heart, into the parts that still ached from loss. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Leora felt something stir inside her. It was small, fragile, but real. It was hope. That night, as she lay in her narrow bunk, she realized something she had never expected to feel again. She was not alone anymore. And Kyle, lying awake in his own bunk on the other side of the station, felt the same. Neither of them knew what the future would bring, but both of them knew this. Their bond had begun, and it was something worth holding on to. Life on the station began to feel almost normal for Cale and Leora. Each day they found small moments together, sharing food, watching the stars, talking about things that no one else cared to ask her. Cale didn't realize how much he looked forward to seeing her until one day she wasn't there. He searched the halls, checking the mess, the observation deck, even the quiet corners of the engine bay. Finally, he found her in the docking ring, staring at the ships that came and went. Her eyes were sharp, her shoulders tense. She looked like prey that had just smelled a predator. "What's wrong?" Kyle asked. "They are here," she whispered. "Who?" "The ones who destroyed my world." Kyle froze. The words felt heavy in the air. He followed her gaze, and that's when he saw it. A freighter docking at the far side of the ring. Painted on its side was a jagged symbol, black against gray steel. Even without knowing her people's history, Kale could feel the menace in it. "Raiders," she said, her voice tight. "Mercenaries who took everything from us. I know that mark." Kale's heart pounded. The station had security, sure, but not enough to stand against the kind of men who carried that symbol. He looked at her, saw the fear in her eyes, and felt something twist inside him. "Come on," he said firmly. "We need to get you somewhere safe." But Leora shook her head. "There is no safe. If they are here, they will find me. They will not stop." Kale reached for her hand without thinking. "Then they'll have to go through me." Her gaze snapped to his, shock flashing across her face. He meant it. Every word. That night, the alarm screamed. Red lights bathed the corridors as voices shouted through the intercom. "Security breach! Hostiles on board?" The raiders had come. They moved like shadows through the halls, armored and armed, their boots striking the metal floors like drum beats of war. People scattered, doors locked, families hid in their quarters. The station shook with the sound of weapons fire. Leora's heart raced as she pressed herself against a wall in one of the maintenance corridors. She could hear their voices, rough, cruel, familiar. Every sound pulled her back to the night her world had burned, but this time she was not alone. Kale stood in front of her, gripping a heavy wrench. It was not much, not against guns and blades, but he held it with the grip of a man who refused to move. "They're looking for me," Leora whispered, her voice breaking. "I know," Kyle said. His voice trembled, but it was steady enough. "And I told you they'll have to get through me first." The first raider rounded the corner, his weapon raised. He sneered when he saw Kale. "Step aside, human. She doesn't belong here." Kale's chest tightened, but he didn't move. "Neither do you." The raider laughed, a cruel sound. "Do you think a wrench will save you?" Kale swallowed hard. His knees shook, but he raised the wrench anyway. "Maybe not. But I'm not letting you touch her." Behind him, Leora's breath caught. No one had ever spoken for her like that since her world was destroyed. No one had ever stood in front of her, willing to bleed in her place. The raider stepped closer, weapon aimed. But Kale stood tall, eyes blazing, heart pounding louder than the alarms. For a moment, even the mercenary seemed to hesitate. There was something in Kale's stance that was stronger than steel, something that could not be bought or broken. More raiders appeared, their boots echoing down the hall. Leora pressed against the wall, torn between terror and awe. Kale gripped the wrench tighter, planting his feet. The hall seemed too small, too quiet, as if the whole station was holding its breath. Kyle's voice rang out, raw and fierce. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me." The corridor shook with the sound of boots, the red alarm lights flashing like blood across the walls. Kale's hands were slick with sweat as he tightened his grip on the wrench. He knew he had no armor, no training, no real chance. But he also knew one thing for certain. He would not let them take Leora. The first raider sneered and lunged. Kale swung the wrench with all his strength, the heavy metal slamming into the man's helmet. The sound rang through the corridor, and the raider staggered back, cursing. Pain shot up Kale's arm from the impact, but he didn't let go. He raised the wrench again, his eyes wild. "Stay behind me, Leora," he shouted. Leora's chest heaved as she watched him. Part of her wanted to scream at him, to run, to hide, to save himself. But another part of her, the part that had been broken for so long, saw something she hadn't seen in years. Someone willing to fight for her. Two more raiders stepped forward, weapons raised. One fired, the shot scorching the wall near Kale's head. The heat burned his cheek, but he didn't falter. He rushed forward, swinging the wrench again. It cracked against the raider's arm, and the weapon clattered to the floor. The corridor erupted in chaos. Shouts, sparks, the hiss of failing vents. Kale fought with desperation. Every strike powered not by skill but by pure will. He wasn't strong enough, wasn't fast enough, but he was stubborn enough. And sometimes that was more frightening than any weapon. But there were too many of them. A raider slammed a fist into Kale's stomach, knocking the wind out of him. Another struck his back, sending him to his knees. His vision blurred, his breath ragged. Still he crawled forward, wrench in hand. He refused to stop. Leora's heart broke as she watched him bleed for her. She couldn't stay hidden anymore. With trembling hands, she grabbed a broken plasma cutter from the floor. The edge sparked weakly, but it was enough. She stepped forward, her voice ringing out with a strength she didn't know she still had. "If you want him, you'll have to go through me, too." The raiders laughed at the sight of her holding a half-broken tool. But their laughter faded when they saw the fire in her eyes. It wasn't the fire of despair. It was the fire of hope, lit by the human who refused to let her stand alone. Side by side, human and alien stood against the mercenaries. Cale, bloodied but unbroken, raised his wrench. Leora, shaking but fierce, held the plasma cutter like a blade. The fight raged on. Sparks flew as metal clashed against armor. Kyle blocked a strike with his wrench, pain shooting down his arm. Leora lunged forward, the plasma cutter hissing as it grazed an enemy's shoulder. They moved together as if bound by something stronger than fear. Cale covered her when she stumbled. Leora struck out when he faltered. They were not warriors, not soldiers. But in that moment, they were something greater. The raiders grew frustrated. These two should have been easy prey. Yet they stood, bleeding and battered, refusing to fall. Every time the mercenaries pushed forward, Cale and Leora pushed back, fueled by something no weapon could crush. But the price was heavy. Cale took a strike across his side, hot pain burning through his ribs. He gasped, dropping to one knee, the wrench slipping from his hand. Blood stained his shirt, spreading fast. "Kyle!" Leora cried, rushing to his side. She caught him before he hit the ground, her hands trembling as they pressed against his wound. His face was pale, his breath shallow. The raiders circled them, grinning cruelly. "Look at him," one sneered. "Just a human fool, dying for nothing." Cale's eyes fluttered open. His hand reached weakly for Leora's, gripping it with what little strength he had left. His voice was broken, but his words were steady. "Don't let them take you." Something inside Leora shattered. Tears burned her eyes, but her heart roared with fury. She rose to her feet, standing over Cale, her plasma cutter glowing faintly in her hand. Her voice shook the corridor, louder than the alarms. "This human is braver than all of you combined, and I will not let him fall alone." The raiders paused, unsettled by the strength in her tone. For the first time, they saw not just a refugee, not just a survivor, but a warrior born from grief and hope. And beside her, Cale, bleeding but unbroken, smiled faintly. Even on the edge of darkness, he knew they had already won something greater than the fight. They had chosen to stand. Together. Cale's blood pooled warm beneath him as he lay on the cold station floor. His breath came sharp and shallow, every inhale cutting through his chest like broken glass. His vision blurred, red lights flashing faintly in the corners of his sight. He could hear the heavy boots of the raiders around them, their mocking laughter echoing through the corridor. But the only thing he could focus on was Leora. She knelt beside him, her trembling hands pressed against his wound. Her skin, faintly glowing in the alarm lights, was streaked with fear and grief. Her voice cracked as she whispered his name. "Kyle, can you stay with me? Please don't leave me." He forced his eyes open, trying to hold her gaze. His lips were dry, his throat raw, but he still spoke. "Don't let them take you." The raiders jeered at his weakness. One of them stepped closer, pointing his weapon at Cale's chest. "Move aside, alien," he growled. "This human is finished. He can't protect you anymore." Leora looked up at them, her eyes blazing. Something inside her snapped. A wall that had held her back since the fall of her world. For so long she had lived in fear, hiding, surviving, running. But not anymore. Not when this human had bled for her, had stood for her when no one else ever had. She rose to her feet slowly, her body trembling but her grip on the plasma cutter tight. Her voice rang out, stronger than the alarms, stronger than the shouts. "No." The raiders paused, surprised by the defiance in her tone. "You call him weak," she continued, her chest heaving, "but he is stronger than all of you. He stood with nothing but his hands when others had weapons. He stood when the rest of you only destroy. You see a dying man. I see a heart braver than your entire army." Her words cut through the air like a blade. Even Cale, half conscious, felt her voice anchor him, pulling him back from the edge of darkness. The raiders snarled and stepped forward, but there was hesitation in their eyes. They hadn't expected resistance, not from her, not from him. This was supposed to be easy. But nothing about Kale and Leora's stand was easy. She held the plasma cutter in front of her, her knuckles white. The weapon sparked weakly, not meant for fighting, but she held it as if it were the sharpest sword. Her entire body shook, but her eyes never wavered. Kale tried to move, tried to rise again, but his strength was gone. He reached for her hand instead, his bloodied fingers brushing against hers. She squeezed them tight, grounding herself in his touch. "You are not alone," she whispered to him, even as her tears fell. Not anymore. For Leora, this was the breaking point, not of despair, but of change. The fear that had chained her since the destruction of her people cracked apart. In its place grew something fierce, something unyielding. Hope. She looked back at the raiders, her voice rising once more. "If you want him, if you want me, then come. But I swear you will not find victory here. Not today." For a moment, the corridor felt alive with her defiance. Even the alarm seemed quieter, as if listening to her words. The raiders shifted uneasily. They were killers, yes, but killers used to prey that cowered, not prey that stood tall. And this alien woman, with nothing but a half-broken tool and a dying human at her side, now looked unstoppable. Kyle's lips curled faintly into a smile, weak but proud. He had wanted to protect her, but in the end she had found her own strength. He had not failed. He had given her back her voice. The standoff stretched, tension thick in the air. The raiders looked at each other, uncertain. Then in the distance came the sound of heavy boots, the station's guards finally responding to the alarms. The raiders cursed. Their leader spat on the ground, glaring at Leora. "This isn't over," he growled. Then with a sharp gesture they retreated down the corridor, disappearing into the smoke and shadows. The silence that followed was deafening. Leora dropped to her knees beside Kale once more, pressing her hands harder against his wound. Her tears fell freely now, dripping onto his blood-stained shirt. "Stay with me," she begged. "Don't you dare leave me now." "You gave me hope. You can't take it away." Kale's eyes fluttered open just enough to meet hers. His lips moved, his voice soft, barely more than a breath. "I'm not going anywhere." Her chest ached at the words, and she held him tighter. In that moment she knew the truth. No matter what came next, no matter what enemies they faced, she would never let go of this human who had chosen to stand beside her. Even at his breaking point, he had given her strength to rise again, and together, they were unbreakable. The sound of heavy boots echoed through the corridor, louder and steadier than the raiders' fading retreat. Station guards in dark armor rushed in, their rifles raised, their voices sharp with commands. "Secure the area. Protect the civilians." The raiders, seeing their chance gone, melted into the smoke, fleeing back toward their ship. Angry shouts and bursts of gunfire followed as the guards pushed after them. Soon the echoes of battle faded, leaving only silence and the bitter smell of scorched metal. Leora's hands were still pressed against Kyle's wound. Her palms were slick with his blood, her fingers trembling as she tried to keep him alive. She barely noticed the guards around her until one of them knelt at her side. "Move aside, we'll take him," the guard said urgently. "No," she cried, her voice sharp and desperate. She bent over Kale protectively, her glowing eyes fierce. "You will not leave him. You will not treat him like just another body. He fought for me. He bled for me. You keep him alive." The guard hesitated. He had never seen an alien woman so fierce, so commanding. With a nod, he motioned for the medics. They rushed forward, opening a case of supplies, quickly checking Kale's pulse, his breathing, his bleeding. "He's alive," one medic said, voice tight. "But only just. We need to get him to the medbay now." A stretcher was brought, and carefully they lifted Kale onto it. He groaned faintly, eyes fluttering open, searching until they found Leora. She was there instantly, clutching his hand, refusing to let go. "I'm here," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm not leaving you. Do you hear me? Not now. Not ever." Kale's lips curved into the faintest smile. Then his eyes slid shut again as the medics hurried him away. Leora followed every step, ignoring the guards who tried to stop her. "I said I will not leave him," she shouted, her voice trembling with both fear and fire. The guards exchanged glances and finally let her through. Something about her tone made them believe she belonged at his side. The medbay was a rush of voices and light. Machines hummed. Doctors shouted orders, sterile tools clattered onto trays. They cut away Kale's blood-soaked shirt, cleaned the wound, injected medicine to slow the bleeding. The air smelled of antiseptic and metal. Leora stood near the door, her heart hammering, her hands still stained red. She wanted to help, to do something, anything, but all she could do was watch as strangers worked over the man who had risked everything for her. Every time his chest rose with a breath, she whispered a prayer in her own language. Every time the machines beeped steadily, she felt a tiny spark of hope. Hours passed like years. She did not move. She did not eat. She did not close her eyes. Her thoughts spun in circles, replaying every moment, the way he stood in front of her, the way he refused to step aside, the way he smiled through his pain. Finally, a doctor came to her, exhaustion heavy on his face. "He's stable," he said. "The wound was deep, but he will live. He'll need rest, maybe weeks before he can stand again." But he survived. Leora's knees nearly gave out from relief. She pressed her hands to her face, tears spilling freely. She whispered softly, "Thank you," though she wasn't sure if she was speaking to the doctor, to the stars, or to Cale himself. When she was finally allowed inside, Cale lay pale against the white sheets, his chest rising and falling slowly. Tubes and wires surrounded him, machines whispering their steady songs. She sat beside him, carefully taking his hand in both of hers. His fingers were warm, though weak. She bowed her head, her long hair falling like a curtain around them. "You foolish, brave human," she whispered. "Why would you risk everything for me?" Her voice cracked. "But I am glad you did. Because now I know I am not alone. And I swear, Cale, as long as I breathe, I will stay by your side. No one will take you from me." She pressed her forehead gently to the back of his hand, closing her eyes. The station outside still carried the scars of the raid. People whispered about the human engineer who had faced mercenaries with nothing but a wrench, and about the alien woman who stood beside him. His name was spoken with respect, her courage with awe, but none of that mattered to Leora. What mattered was here. In this quiet room, the steady beat of Cale's heart, the warmth of his hand in hers, the promise that neither of them would ever be alone again. And though Cale slept deeply, some part of him seemed to hear her. His lips twitched faintly, forming a word so soft it was almost a breath. Together. The medbay was quiet, filled only with the soft rhythm of machines and the steady hum of air recyclers. Cale lay on the narrow bed, pale but alive, his body still weak from the wound. Days had passed since the raid, and the world outside seemed to move on. But inside this room, time felt slower, heavier, more fragile. Leora had not left his side. She slept only in brief moments, her head resting near his arm, her hand never releasing his. She was a stranger in this place, yet no one dared to pull her away. The doctors and nurses learned quickly. Where Cale went, she would follow. On the fourth day, Cale's eyes opened fully for the first time. His gaze was unfocused at first, then slowly sharpened, finding her face. "You stayed," he whispered, his voice hoarse and weak. Leora's lips trembled into a smile. "Of course. I said I would." "Did you doubt me, human?" Cale tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough. Even so, the sound warmed her heart. She brushed her fingers gently over his hair, her touch tender. "You should not speak too much. You need to heal." "I'll heal faster," he murmured, "if you're here." Her chest tightened at those words. No one in her life had ever spoken to her like that, without fear, without suspicion, without seeing her as something dangerous or strange. He spoke to her as if she were just someone worth keeping. The days of recovery stretched long, but slowly, Cale grew stronger. The color returned to his cheeks, the strength to his arms. Each time he sat up, Leora was there, steadying him. Each time he walked a step, she was beside him, ready to catch him if he fell. In return, he gave her something she had never known before, a place where she belonged. He did not care that her skin shimmered faintly in the light, or that her voice carried the lilt of another world. To him, she was simply Leora. But outside the medbay, rumors spread. Some whispered that Cale was a fool to tie himself to an alien woman. Others feared what her presence might bring, attention from those who hated her kind. The station leaders warned him quietly, "When you're healed, you should step away from her. It's safer, for both of you." Cale listened, but his heart had already chosen. One evening, when the stars glowed faintly beyond the station's glass, he sat with Leora at his side. He was strong enough now to hold her hand without trembling. He looked at her with steady eyes, his voice quiet but firm. "They want me to walk away," he said. "They say I should leave you." Leora froze. She had feared this moment. Her hands tightened slightly, though her face remained calm. "Perhaps they are right," she whispered. "Being near me will only bring you danger. You have already nearly died once because of me." Kyle shook his head. "No, I nearly died because I chose to stand with you. And I'd make the same choice again." Her breath caught. She searched his face, looking for hesitation, but found none. His eyes held only truth, and it broke something inside her. A wall she had carried all her life. The belief that no one could ever truly stand by her side. "I am not human," she said softly. "I cannot give you what your people give. My world is far from here. My path is heavy with enemies." "I don't care," Kyle said, his voice steady. "You're not just your world. You're not just your past. You're Leora, and that's enough for me."